Ross needs an auditor who knows the industry as well as he does. For Brian, it's whether he can call the partner at midnight.
So?
They both came up with the same name, BDO.
Huh.
People who know BDO.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to On the Money. I'm Maria Bartiromo. Stocks hit new 5-year highs while the markets don't care about the sequester, but you should. Big moves, big money, and big politics.
We should not have to move a third bill before the Senate gets off their ass and begins to do something.
But everybody's gone home for the weekend. Government by crisis, and nothing gets done. How will it all affect you? And the memoirs of a music mogul. My conversation with the legendary Clive Davis, the hitmaker who's worked with everybody from Johnny Cash to Bruce. Amazing stories from an amazing era. On the Money begins right now.
This is America's #1 financial news program, On the Money. Now, Maria Bartiromo.
Here's a look at what's making news as we head into a new week on the money. The Fed is once again rescuing the markets and investors. In testimony before Congress this week, Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke assured the markets that interest rates will stay low for the foreseeable future. Inflation is not an issue, and he said that he is not concerned about eventually raising those rates. The markets were thrilled by the news and had their best 2-day streak of the year, the Dow closing at fresh 5-year highs. Dallas Federal Reserve President Richard Fisher told me the Fed is very aware of what the stock market and the economy are doing.
We have been the source of fuel for whatever recovery we've had, but I think there are limits. And there's also a danger of our becoming a narcotic people become dependent. I call it monetary Ritalin. It has served a purpose, and it is a deliberate effort on behalf of the FOMC to raise the market so that we have a wealth effect that then goes down to the people. But we haven't seen employment expand, and that's part of our mandate given to us by Congress. So I think it's time to really perhaps just taper this off.
The economy has grown for 14 consecutive quarters, though the latest one was extremely weak. The second reading of the gross domestic product was released this week, revised upwards to a meager 0.1% from the previous contraction reading. Exports were stronger than first measured. Some signs of consumer strength in the week's earnings, though. Home improvement giants Lowe's and Home Depot beat expectations, as did Macy's. JCPenney missed by a wide margin. Telecommuting, working from home will be a thing of the past for Yahoo employees. CEO Marissa Mayer saying that the company needs a change in culture. Proximity breeds innovation, and all employees have to report to the building. Well, it's a story of mixed signals this week. Concerns about the mandatory spending cuts of the sequester as the market toys with new highs. Which one should you pay more attention to? Joining me right now, David Darst, Chief Investment Strategist with Morgan Stanley Wealth Management, and Ben White, Chief Economic Strategist with Politico. Gentlemen, good to have you on the program.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being here. So, David, let me kick it off with you. Let's start with the markets. Hitting 5-year highs this week. Amazing what's going on as this market flirts with all-time highs. The market doesn't care about sequester. Should we be caring about it? Do you think this rally holds?
Maria, it's going to be dependent on the 4 Ps. Profits. Profits exceeded forecasts for the fourth quarter, as you know. Secondly, is personal income. Wall Street Journal on Friday, this past Friday, talked about the wage growth it's been very anemic. Okay, it's up only 2%. Thirdly, is production, and that basically is the hiring. The hiring, not the wages, but the hiring. And that's been relatively anemic, as you know as well. And the fourth P is politics. And you hit on it with sequestration. I think one of the things that your investor base and your viewing audience have to be aware of is a potential debt downgrade, another debt downgrade by the United States, where we go down maybe to AA, we're AA plus now, or AA, or even single A plus. So if the profits can continue strong, if the hiring can pick up a little bit, if the wage growth can pick up a little bit, and politics don't get in the way, Maria, the market can go higher.
You know, it's funny, politics has not gotten in the way for the most part, Ben. I mean, even though we have all of this, back and forth on spending cuts, the market keeps going higher. So let me ask you about that. I mean, what's the impact of the market at record highs or near record highs? Does that help the Republicans who want to push for cuts, or does it help the Democrats? Or, I mean, does it put pressure on one side?
I think it helps the Republicans at this point to see a market that's not reacting negatively to sequestration, that doesn't think taking $85 billion out of this $3 trillion budget is that big a deal. And if that continues, if the markets continue to rise or at least sort of stay where they are, and you don't see huge inconveniences to people based on this sequestration, that's very helpful to Republicans. And it means that we get probably more budget cuts down the road, harder for Obama to make the argument that we can't cut more spending. So it's difficult for Obama, who has also said in leading up to sequestration that we would see horrible impact.
Let me play a clip for you, Ben. I want to get your reaction from Paul Ryan earlier this week. He downplays the impact of the sequester. Listen to this.
Do we believe that the government, which spends $3.5 trillion this year, can do with $85 billion less? Yes. Do we believe that a government that spends more than $100 billion a year in what we call improper payments, money that shouldn't even be spent, can go after waste and inefficiency without raising taxes? Yes, we believe that.
Do you agree with that? Is that right, what he said?
Well, it's what the Democrats would say is we can cut that much money. $85 billion is not the problem. The problem is how the cuts are implemented. They're across the board. They're not targeted. They're not taking out those improper payments, waste, fraud, and abuse. They're across all programs. It's Head Start. It's school lunches. It's stuff that really matters to people. And a lot of cuts in the defense budget that could be problematic for national security. They would say, we'd like to cut spending, we could cut this and more, but we'll do it in a more targeted way and a balanced way, which is what they want: more revenues. They want to close tax loopholes. They want to eliminate the carried interest tax exemption for private equity hedge funds, take away some oil and gas tax loopholes, they call them. So it's not so much the amount that Democrats are opposed to, it's the manner in which that amount is taken out and the fact that there's no revenue included in it.
Right. What about the Fed, David? I mean, this week, I guess the markets were reassured that Ben Bernanke is going to be there still buying bonds, the bond buying program very much in place. How important is that? Is that what's supporting this market, or is it more than that?
Maria, last year the market was up 16% total return. It's up another 6% through Friday, as you know. I find the Fed's help is basically been supporting the markets. We need fundamentals to kick in. He's doing the best he can. People like to criticize Ben Bernanke. The Fed's doing the best they can, but it's like a parent in a two-parent, the two parents are monetary policy and fiscal policy. And one parent is exceedingly lenient and generous with gifts and candy and toys, and the other one is extremely stingy. And I would love to see them come together.
Isn't the Fed bailing out the policymakers, Ben?
Yeah, at this point they are. I mean, and Ben Bernanke has said this in all of his testimony. Can you, Congress, please deal with your fiscal situation a little bit better than you are? And he doesn't want to see the austerity the way it's being applied through sequestration. He made that clear in his most recent testimony. He would like to see long-term deficit reduction that addresses Social Security and Medicare, which crush us when the baby boom starts retiring. But he doesn't want to see a lot of money come out of the economy right now.
All right. In the face of all of this, David, what should we be doing with our money today?
You want to find places in this world, Maria, this great big world of ours, where the tourniquet is being released. You're going to have both the monetary and fiscal accelerator pressed to the floor in Japan. So you want to own some Japanese equities. Secondly is you want to look at Mexico, and they are basically going to release the straitjacket that they've had on their energy sector. That's why you're drillers, so you could play that through Mexican equities, you could play it through the big U.S. drillers. You want to buy your U.S. global gorillas, which we've talked about many times, which are the U.S. multinationals that sell at relatively attractive valuations, that have fortress-like balance sheets, pay good dividends.
Yeah, they're paying dividends. That's the positive there.
Global management focus. That's what you want to be looking at.
Great. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Great conversation. We appreciate your time tonight. Ben White, David Dorst. Up next on The Money, the changes ahead at home and abroad due to the sequester cuts, and a look at what the administrators in government agencies go through to carry out the doomsday scenario. Then he worked with Springsteen, Janis Joplin, Whitney, Aretha, and a lot more. Music legend Clive Davis knows a bestseller when he hears one. As we take a break, take a look at how the stock market ended the week. Back in a moment. Well, beyond Washington's debate over the March 1st automatic spending cuts, those at the American agencies doing work, both domestically and internationally, must contend with the coming cuts. Dr. Raj Shah is the administrator of the United States Agency for International Development. Mary Schiavo is the former Inspector General for the Department of Transportation. Good to see you both. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Raj, let me kick it off with you. Under the sequester, the State Department and U.S. aid should see about $2.6 billion in cuts. Foreign aid accounts for about 1% of the federal budget. What's at stake as you look at these across-the-board cuts?
Well, thank you, Maria. And first, I would say that my agency's mission is to advance America's national security and economic prosperity by working in future emerging markets. And really what the steps we're taking to handle the sequestration challenge, as painful as they are consistent with our approach since we took office. We've been cutting programs and focusing on a business-like, results-oriented strategy that engages private sector companies, often great American companies, towards the mission of helping to build more stable and more secure emerging markets.
Walk us through the process of having to administer this. Have you already started to phase out programs? What's the immediate impact on your work?
Well, over the course of the last 3 years, we've actually phased out more than 300 programs based on a very rigorous return on investment approach to what we're going to get as we go forward.
And of course, this is the international story. Let's talk about the domestic story, Mary. You were Inspector General at the Department of Transportation during the government shutdown back in 1995. Give us some insight into the process of managing operations while having to administer these cuts.
Well, it was an entirely different attitude, and I think that attitude needs to be resurrected here. We were basically told, look, you're a federal manager. You were hired to manage a multi-million-dollar agency, you know, and for the whole DOT, multi-billion-dollar agency. And if you can't manage an 8%, in this case, budget cut, then you're not a very good manager. We were told just to do it and to make sure our customers, who are the American public, feel as little pinch as possible, where now it seems to be the opposite. Everybody is running around saying, oh, everyone's going to be hurt. The bottom line, for example, on the Federal Aviation Administration, out of about $24 billion, there's 11 that's exempt, 11 billion, 13 is subject to sequestration, and OMB has already said only 1 billion of that is going to be subject to it in the end. So it's not as draconian, and the world's not going to stop.
But what about these cuts that we're hearing about to the FAA and the potential impact on domestic travelers? How would things be different if the agencies had the discretion to manage their cuts themselves? And are you expecting a lot of upset this week, given the domestic travel situation?
No, and if there is an upset, we have to ask, what are these federal managers doing? Because remember, they have discretion within the department. Now they're saying they're going to close some air traffic control towers. Remember, there have been reports from the Office of Inspector General starting in the 90s that several hundred air traffic controllers need to be shut because they're low activity, and there would be a huge savings. For example, if they would farm out some of these towers that they're threatening to cut, they have been asked to close. They have been asked to privatize. A private tower costs about $500,000 a year. FAA tower costs about $2 million a year. So there's huge savings there. Many of these cuts have been on the books for years, and this is a market correction for government. And if approached with the right attitude, they can do tremendous good for the public and for the bottom line, and might even come out with more discretionary funds to really do things that matter, like finish the next generation air traffic control program, for one. So I don't think the public should feel the cuts at all, and if they are, I think that it's intentional. A good manager can manage an 8% cut.
That's very good. Very good news, Mary. So Raj, what do you see as the big damage of the sequester drama?
For far less than 1% of our federal budget, we put more than 4 million people on AIDS treatment in Africa. We save 220,000 children under the age of 5 from malaria in Africa. We have supported 8 million young children, including 3 million girls being in school in Afghanistan. And if we fall back on those commitments around the world, others look to America to lead, and we put ourselves at national security risk. And I felt that very viscerally last week when I was in Mogadishu. I was the highest ranking official, the first U.S. official to be there in more than 20 years, because there's an opportunity to advance a country and to reclaim a nation from a terrorist organization that has an avowed desire to harm America and Americans. And it's all for less than 1% of the budget, and we do our work now in a deeply business-like manner.
Well, it's a real dilemma, looking to do the right thing outside of the United States when you're facing tight budgets inside the United States and wanting to do the right thing for Americans as well. Good to have you both on the program. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Raj Shah and Mary Schiavo joining us. Up next on The Money, the man with the golden ears. Recording industry legend Clive Davis will join me on the big business of music. including what he's listening to now. I hope you'll find us on Facebook. Look for Maria Bartiromo. Back in a moment. Well, if you name any of the best-selling recording artists of the last few decades, from Dylan and Springsteen to Whitney Houston and Alicia Keys, my next guest has been intimately involved with their careers, in fact, led many of them. Clive Davis was president of Columbia Records, founder of both Arista and J Records. His memoir is called The Soundtrack of My Life. Clive Davis, and that book continues to rise on the bestseller list, now hitting #2. Good to have you on the program.
Well, thank you so much.
Congratulations on the book and the success of your career. Clive, you've worked with so many music legends at the beginning of their career, when many of us didn't realize what was to come. How do you know when a musician is going to be a commercial hit and really connect with paying audiences?
Well, my first test, I had never signed an artist before. We have to go back to the Monterey Pop Festival, 1967, and I saw Janis Joplin and Big Brother and the holding company. And, you know, it was the midst of a music revolution. I got that, just that feeling, overpoweringly feeling, whether it's a cliche, that tingle up your spine. I dedicated myself to signing her. I did. And then I started trusting my ear when I saw Santana, when I saw Bruce Springsteen, Earth, Wind and Fire. Gradually, I built this track record of signing artists who were not just hit artists, but became Hall of Famers.
Superstars, Hall of Famers. Did you want to go into the music industry from the beginning? You were a lawyer.
I got there through luck. This is pure luck. I became the lawyer for Columbia Records. I was the lawyer for 5 years. And one day, my boss, Goddard Lieberson, first offered me the musical instruments division because he was becoming a group president. And by luck, his executive vice president wanted that. Goddard looked at me and he said, okay, you're going to have Columbia Records. It happened just like that.
What a career. So what happened? I mean, you've seen so much. What happened when Apple came on the scene? Technology has changed so much about how consumers interact with music, digital music sales, replacing the actual physical purchases. I can't remember the last time I saw a record store.
My personal work has not changed at all. I've got to find the stars of tomorrow, whatever the form of delivery is, whether it was the cassette, the CD, or digital. But the record industry was late in embracing the digital revolution. So regretfully, there was a substantial number of people in the public, you know, who thought they could get music free. And instead of coming up with a legal way to make all this happen, it was illegal, and it's been illegal, and there's a lot of piracy, and that's affected you. For me, I look, is this one of these cases where the underlying business is made obsolete by technology? No way. Music is as vital today as it's ever been. So gradually, as we root out piracy, as we embrace the revolution, this year for the first time, records worldwide sold more than the last year. So I know we're making progress, but we were hurt for a few years.
Who are the big stars of today?
Well, the big stars, Adele, from a commercial point of view, you know, is the biggest. Her album worldwide would sell 22 million.
Unbelievable.
I have a Grammy party every year, the night before the Grammys, and this year I wanted to show the vitality of new artists. So I put on Miguel, the Lumineers. I put on Emily Sandé. And I put as a duet Jennifer Hudson doing with Miss Gladys Knight, Heard It Through the Grapevine. So of course, you know, my task is to get that audience lifted out of their seat.
Love that. So how do you listen to music? Do you subscribe to streaming services? What's
what I do
when you're
is,
enjoying music? What do you do?
Well, I listen to streaming. I'm aware of everything, but I have to worry about going over the hill. I mean, I've been very fortunate. I every week take a tape of a record that just hit the charts, so that my ears don't go over the hill. So that I've seen too many of my peers get rooted in the songs and the tempos
of yesterday.
Yeah.
Oh, you got to keep up.
So I got to keep up.
Now, not all the response to your book has been positive. What about Kelly Clarkson? She took issue with your comments about her. Has there been a reaction to the opening up in this book that has surprised you?
No, Kelly we had a difference of opinion on memory, what my reaction was to one of her songs, what her reaction was to two of my songs. Quite to the contrary. In the industry, everybody's buying gifts for every employee, whether it's entertaining or educational or revealing. I mean, you know, I've got to say the reception has been spectacular.
Clive Davis joining us, a music legend. Up next, a look at the news this week that will have an impact on the money. And then, how do you plan for retirement if you're infallible? A look at Benedict XVI's next egg when we come right back. Stay with us. And for more On the Money, go to our website, otm.cnbc.com. I hope you'll follow me on Twitter and on Google Plus as well. Look for @Maria_Bartiromo. Now look at the stories coming up in the week ahead that may move the markets and impact your money this week. On Wednesday, the Federal Reserve Beige Book will offer a look at regional economies across the country. Thursday, we'll find out if the U.S. is importing or exporting more with the international balance of trade. And on Friday, the big one, the Labor Department out with the next monthly jobs report that tells us how many jobs the economy lost or gained in the month of February. Typically a market mover. Well, when it comes to your retirement, do you plan ahead or just pray? Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI has done both. The first pontiff to resign in nearly 600 years forced the Holy See into making some quick decisions regarding Benedict's benefits in his golden years. That includes retaining the Vatican's private health care policy, as well as free lodging and caretaking by a small group of German nuns. His Holiness will receive a monthly pension of around 2,500 euros a month. That's nearly $3,300, close to the maximum monthly Social Security payout for American retirees. That's the show for today. Thank you so much for being with me. Next week, join us. Is it Google's world and we're just living in it? Nikesh Arora, the technology giant's chief business officer, will join me. Each week, keep it right here where we are on the money. Have a great week, everybody. I'll see you again next weekend.